Riley Keough, welcome to 7:30.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
There's a beautiful, poignant expression in the book that you use about your mother. You say she was the princess of America and didn't want to be. How was she convinced? How did she convince herself that her life story deserved to be told?
I don't know if she did. I think that she just felt like a desire to connect with people and share her life experiences because she'd been through so much. And I think she kind of thought, what's the point of going through all of these things like, addiction and loss and, very human things, falling in love and having children if you can't share your story and, help other people feel less alone in the world. So I think it was more about human connection and helping people, I think, was her motive.
That human connection is obviously the story of her life, but you wrote the book in part by listening to tapes of her speaking about her life. Can you tell us what that experience was like?
It was incredibly emotional. I think when your loved ones pass away, typically there's, you have some videos or maybe voicemails or a couple things left over, but to have like 16 tapes of your parent who's passed away telling their entire life story was like really beautiful and also felt daunting to listen to. When I first heard the tapes, it was incredibly emotional because it was the first time I'd heard her voice since she'd passed away. And then I started just formatting it into the book, and the stories also got very funny and wild and crazy, and then it became more of more. It started to feel more like a phone call with her, which was really beautiful in a way. I keep kind of wanting to tell people that they should, if their parents are alive, record them kind of giving their oral history because it's really like beautiful to have.
You're very lucky in that way. Now, talking about wild and crazy, she describes her childhood at Graceland, and she describes the place upstairs where she had her room and Elvis had his room as a sanctuary. But what was Lisa Marie's childhood like there?
Wise men say.
It was incredibly wild and free, and I think she felt very connected and loved, and it was her favorite place in the world, and she had a lot of power there, and she was like a little princess who was allowed to do whatever she wanted, and I think that she was a little bit of a tyrant, so it's kind of funny to read those chapters, or I find them to be funny anyways.
Now, her adoration of her father is one of the strongest themes in the book. How would you describe their relationship?
I think that she was a daddy's girl, and she was, she felt incredibly loved by him and protected by him, and just adored him, and he adored her, and they had a really incredible bond, and he was like her whole world, and I think she was his as well, and so it was a very significant relationship in her life.
It seems from what you say that he taught her how to love in a very big way.
I think so. I think that was in the way that she would talk. One of the greatest loves of her life, was her father, and I think that because she shared that experience with like the world, I think it like maybe didn't leave room for her own grief and her own loss. So I think that was like a sort of a lifetime of her kind of, I guess, unpacking this thing that she held so tightly, which was her personal grieving experience.
Well, since my baby left me, well, I found a new place to dwell.
Of course, you never met him. He's such a dominant figure, such a huge figure in really almost in the world's imagination. But what is he to you?
He's just like my grandfather to me. and my mother's father, who passed away, and my relationship with him is very personal in that sense. Like anybody's, you know, who grew up kind of hearing about their grandfather would be. You know, I'm aware that it's a different situation, and he's everywhere, and I'm reminded of him often. But the emotional connection is personal, yeah.
There must be lights burning brighter somewhere.
Was the music present in your childhood, his music?
It was present in that it was always on the radio or in places I was walking into. You know, it's like Elvis is kind of, if you're trying to notice it, it's kind of everywhere.
Everywhere. Yep.
As far as her playing his music, she didn't really play his music until later in her life. I think that it was very personal to her. And she wouldn't, you know, the first time I remember her turning on his music was in the car with my sisters, so I would have been, you know, in my early 20s. And she put on the radio and said, you know, this is your grandfather singing. And I'd never heard her or seen her put his music on. So it was like I remember it vividly, and that's in the book as well. And prior to that, like, her relationship with his music was a very personal thing, and I think she would listen to it alone. And sometimes when she was drinking at the end of the night, she would listen to it and feel emotional. But yeah, we didn't grow up with her kind of playing it all the time in the car. But if it came on the radio, she would leave it on.
What's it like for you now, Graceland? When you go back there, what are the feelings that you have about that place?
It's bittersweet. It's you know, it used to be a place that was filled with kind of joy and fun, and our family would go for, you know, holidays and have dinners and stuff. And now it's difficult. My mother and my brother are both buried there, so it's definitely an emotional experience. But I try to still have like joyful moments with my family there and keep that alive, because I think that's important.
It's very hard for outsiders to understand the unique otherness, the weirdness of fame. Was that part of the attraction of Michael Jackson to your mother, that he was from that same world?
I don't think it. I don't think that was one of the reasons that she wanted to be in a relationship with him. I think that having that sort of lifestyle in common was probably like a shared experience that they had. But I don't think that was like the reason that she liked him.
She liked him because she liked him, right?
She liked him because she liked him, yeah.
Simple in that sense. What kind of a presence was he in your recollection?
In my experience as a child, he was just, you know, he was my stepfather. So he was in my home, and it was like a kind of, it sounds kind of silly to say, but it felt like a pretty normal experience with a stepfather. He was very kind to us, and they would have a lot of fun together, and there was a lot of laughter and silliness, and that's, you know, that was my experience.
Your mother defended him against the allegations of child molestation. Did you and your brother ever talk about it?
No, we never talked about it. She said in the book that she had never, you know, seen anything, and that was kind of all she says in the book. But no, my brother and I never discussed that.
Not a topic in the family?
No, it wasn't, actually.
Reading it, especially obviously thinking about the end of Elvis's life, Michael Jackson's drug use must have been extremely confronting for your mother. Did you talk to her about it before coming to write about it in the book?
She was pretty able to confront everything, you know. She was very tough and definitely would have just been confrontational about it. to him in the moment. I think that I'm sure that if there were those conversations between them, that that she, I'm sure it was obviously upsetting, regardless of her father. If that was a topic. This is hypothetical.
Hypothetical. No, I get it. In the book, you describe a rapprochement between your mother and Priscilla, obviously after a very difficult relationship. There's a song that Lisa Marie wrote about it, which you quote in the book. The lyrics say she has forgiven her. Had she, or was it too late for forgiveness?
I think that song is it, to me, feels like the truest form of their relationship, and I think it's pretty common in your life with your parents to have phases where you're not doing as well, where you're closer, and they were just like regular parents and daughters in that way. But for the most part, I would say that song to me represents like the truth underneath their relationship, and I always thought it was really beautiful.
Your mother technically died from complications after surgery, but actually you say you believe she died of a broken heart after your brother died.
Yeah, that was just how I felt. I felt that she wasn't able to really recover from losing him and being here without him.
You said you had an intimation being with your mother in the weeks leading up to her death, that she was, if I understand it correctly, she was sort of detaching, separating from life. If you were aware of that at the time, that must have been very distressing for you that you couldn't hold on to her.
I think that a lot of my life has been like a practice in surrender, and I think that was another moment of just, allowing what is to be. I've grown up with addiction around me a lot, and strong-willed people, and one thing I know is that you can't, force people to have a different faith than they're going to have. So I think that I did. Of course, it was distressing, but I also just I'd come from many years of that uncertainty.
I've been reading the responses to the book. There's been a few already, and clearly people are fascinated by the fact that your mother kept your brother's body in the home at home for a couple of months after he died. Mm-hmm. Do you understand why she did that?
I do. It didn't really seem the way that it actually occurred was that she was offered, the funeral home offered for them to put him, in a room instead of taking him to the home, and she accepted the offer. And I think that was just coming from a place of being a mother and having that option to know where your son is, and instead of sending him off to somewhere. I think that was like an unusual circumstance that was because my mom was Lisa Marie Presley, that she was given that option, But it was really like it was the 2 months thing just kind of accidentally happened because we didn't know where he was going to be buried. And it was COVID, and there were a lot of, restrictions, and we weren't sure if he was going to end up in Hawaii or in Graceland. And so time just kept, moving. And then 2 months had gone by when we kind of had a plan to take him to Graceland. So I'm aware that, that's a super uncommon circumstance, but it's what happened.
Now, you say you spent years trying to understand, and I'm quoting you here, the profound sense of unworthiness that Lisa Marie felt. Do you understand it now?
Not really. I think that growing up with the attention on her that she had, and in the time she did with all of the the tabloids and how intense that used to be up until, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. I would imagine that contributed to her insecurity. You know, from as far back as I can remember, it was like she was on every magazine cover, and it was usually very negative. So I think that going into the grocery store every day and seeing that all day long, I would imagine, would create insecurity, amongst other things, amongst losing a parent, you know, very young, not having real solid friendships. Like, I think there were a lot of reasons why she felt that way, and she was also incredibly strong and wildly truthful and honest and present in a way that was really incredible. So she wasn't just insecure.
No, and the portrait you've given us is of someone of enormous capacity to love and be warm and funny. And I want to thank you, Riley Keough, for taking some time to talk to us about it and for giving us this beautiful portrait for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much.